scheme of THSTI, which has been around for some time. And this is a webinar intended to promote the adoption of the scheme by professionals, GCP professionals. This is a part of a series of programs that we are doing to promote the scheme. As you know, GCP, knowledge of GCP is a regulatory requirement. Certification is not. Certification is voluntary. And therefore, as THSTI, which has domain expertise in GCP after years of doing training in GCP, we decided that there's time that we certify our professionals in such a manner as that they can not only qualify within India, but also qualify abroad. So we have based a scheme on both international standards of ICH as well as domestic requirements laid down by CDSU. There are two components of the scheme. Dr. Sujeta, I think, is taking an overview and she will tell you in detail where you could get certified through a professional certification body, an independent body, which is not THSTI itself. It approves those bodies after due assessment. Or if you need training, you could get trained by a training institution, which is also approved by THSTI. So the details will be given by Sujeta. I welcome you all once again to this webinar, and hope that post this webinar, your understanding of the scheme and especially the requirement of the standard which has been laid down for GCP professionals on what competence, what knowledge and skills they should have will be enhanced. And some of you would feel confident enough to come forward and get certified. We have one personal certification body approved as of today, and you are free to go to that certification body and get certified. With these opening remarks, let me welcome you once more. Welcome all the resource persons and all the participants to this webinar. And I hope at the end of the 2 hours of this session today, you would have value added to you, and some of you would come forward to get certified in the scheme. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Shri Jowhari ji, for giving away the welcome address and the opening remarks. I really appreciate your being there, and because you are, as a chairperson of the steering committee of GCPPCS, might have the best person to give the overview also. Yes. So thank you once again, sir. So I'll just quickly
go. Thank you, Jowhari, sir. Thank you so much. Yeah, now I invite Dr. Sucheta, who is principal scientist 2 here at THSTI, to give a GCPPCS overview.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sonia. I'll quickly take you through the GCPPCS overview. Sonia, just let us know when Dr. Gupta joins, and also Dr. Sanish joins, so that we are...
Dr. Sanish is already in the room.
Okay.
I'm waiting for Dr. Gupta ji. He's somewhere. He is trying to join.
No problem. No problem.
So we can start, we can resume in meanwhile.
Sure. Ladies and gentlemen, all of you who are joining, I'm sure you might be aware about what is GCP. GCP is good clinical practice. It's a regulatory requirement for all ethics committee members, investigators also, and all the members who are involved in clinical trials to be trained in good clinical practice if they are engaged in clinical trials in India. As per the new drugs and clinical trial rules, 2019, it has become mandatory for them. It is a quality and ethical and safe regulatory standard which is followed internationally. In India, it is by CDSU, GCP 2001, and globally it is GCP E6R2 2016. Many people ask this question to me, that is GCP compliance necessary? Yes, as per the NDCT rules, you can see page 150 and 151. If you're not trained in GCP, you will be deemed as disqualified as a member of ethics committee in your research institutions. So we long ago, as Shri Anil Jowhari ji said, we had been involved in GCP training for several years, and then we embarked off a journey to benchmark this. We took a help of the experts, national experts, and formed a committee to work on this, and mainly focused on 2 different areas. We had been very fortunate to have all the people on board And we launched this course on 15th August and dedicated this to nations, this GCPPCS personal certification scheme. This happens to be the first in globe certification scheme. We do not know about any other certification scheme which is based on ISO 17024 standards globally. Having the experience of working with GCP training and trained professionals and untrained professionals, we were able to map competence, which is based on knowledge, skill, and attitude. This GCPPCS is based on the normal scenarios that in this field there are two types of scenarios. One is the regulatory sectors, one is the voluntary sectors. GCPPCS falls under the voluntary schemes. Just like we have global gap for good agricultural practices, we have yoga certification bodies, we also have traditional healer and forest certification schemes. THSTI's GCPPCS is based on the examples which are set by others. This was done with a lot of background and activity which still continues based on the strength, weakness, opportunities and threats of the existing systems here, as well as THSTI's core competence. As mentioned that CDSA THSTI or THSTI is the scheme owner. Now we call it Biotechnology Research Innovation Council, BRIC, THSTI, Translation Health Science and Technology Institute. The slides will be there with you, and you can go to Google and just put GCPPCS and it will bring you to us. There's an email address for any queries or any details you can write to us. We have been fortunate to meet our Drugs Controller General of India on November 2023 to update him about this status. And based on the activity that we do, we'll keep him informed and take our steps forward in strengthening the regulatory as well as ethical and quality standards of clinical trials in India. As I mentioned, that this is based on global benchmarking and based on competency assessment, which is knowledge, skill, and attitude. As mentioned by Sri Anil Johari in today's opening remarks, he mentioned about two areas of the scheme. One is the left-hand side, you can see, which is Personal Certification Body, PRCB. We have Northeastern Christian University, NECU, which is the PRCB in India for us, and we will have many upcoming PRCBs in days to come probably. If anybody feels that he or she is trained in GCP and do not require any further hand holding, can directly write to PRCB, NECU. They may or may not mark a CC to us and go and take this exam or the competency exam from NECU, and this is an online exam. NECU is also 17024 certified or for the traditional healer scheme, and we will be working with the NABCB National Accreditation Board for certification bodies for the scheme of the CDSA THSTA GCPPCS scheme. If somebody feels that they are not trained in GCP or they are trained but they are not confident to take up this exam, there can be many training institutions who will be working with us, and we will put the list of all the training institutions as well as PRCBs in our GCP PCS website in days to come. They can go to those institutes, take the training, and then finally go to PRCB. So whether you are trained or not trained, your final destination will always be the PRCB. This system is not based on a single person or a single group. There is a huge background or a strong governance structure for this. There's a steering committee which Sri Johari heads, who is a former CEO of NABCB QCI. And we also have a technical committee which is headed by Dr. YK Gupta ji. We have an assessment committee which is headed by Sri Krish. And we have a review and decision panel and appellate authority exactly as per the requirements of ISO 17024. NABCB, as I was mentioning, National Accreditation Board for Certification Bodies, is a signatory of International Accreditation Forum. There is a mutual multilateral agreement with the multilateral recognition arrangement for ISO 17024, which is a personal certification standard. This means that the certification that you get from PRCB NECU is internationally equivalent. That means if you are getting a certificate in India, it is internationally equivalent to any place in the world, whether it is Greece or Japan or Canada or any other place. The entire international equivalence can be best understood through this diagram, which is a schematic schematic representation, and it says that how the minimum standard of competence, which we lovingly refer as MSc, has an inbuilt details which contains all the parameters which are necessary for one to follow to take up the competence assessment. My colleague, Dr. Sanish Davis, will be speaking about the MSc, which is minimum standard of competence, in my next sessions. As I already mentioned, that GCPPCS is based on a strong governance structure, which includes members from various ministries as well as various technical experts in India and globally. If you go to the website, you'll find a list of the documents. These documents undergo a continuous or a dynamic revisions based on the feedback that we receive. There are a lot of forms which are there. You can use them, or if you have any queries, you can always write to us in gcppcs.cdsa@thsti.res.in. Thank you so much for your patient listening. And this is our Northeast Christian University. You can put GCPPCS and NECU, and they will take you to their website. And this is a MOU that we signed with National Institute of Health and Family Welfare in Delhi for MOU for the training institutions for GCPPCS. And you can see close to 2,000 plus people had registered in our this webinar series to disseminate the information about GCP certifications across India. So thank you so much for your time and attention. And end by saying that if you have a choice, then choose the best. If you don't have a choice, then please do the best. Thank you. Namaskar and Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your kind words and brief about GCPPCS. Dr. YK Gupta is also here. Dr. YK Gupta is also here. Sir, can you hear me? Hello?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, we can hear you. We can start with you first because we had our first session. Yeah. Please start, sir. Please start.
Can you hear me? Can I speak?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay. So my apologies, I'm not there because I am in a meeting in IIT, and I hope that my voice is clear to you, though I'm not able to hear you very clearly. This program, GCPCPS, means Personal Certification Scheme of GCP, is a unique, not in the country, unique in the globe. Why GCP is important? Clinical trials are growing in India, and the value of clinical trial in drug development, development of vaccine, development of new strategy in treatment, and reducing the or unvalidated treatment, comparing to regime, efficacy, side effect, doing health technology assessment. All clinical trials are now have much higher value. Post-pandemic, this has become so important. And also, so many new drugs are being developed, anti-cancer drugs, anti-diabetic drugs, new immunotherapy drugs, and so on and so forth. Therefore, a competent person doing clinical trial is important. When you say that for doing clinical trial, the first certificate person has to sign is that this is done under GCP. He may not know that what he's signing, but it is a regulatory requirement that he has to do under GCP. Now, good clinical practices is being trained today in India by large number of bodies, institutions, individuals. When we say a person is doing GCP, competent person, he has to sign. When he signs, it means he is competent. But he is many times not competent because he is not being assessed. And therefore, it is important thing that the person competence is standardized, the training method is also standardized, and post training, there is a method of assessment so that we know that the person is fully acquired the regulatory requirements and the standards. It is also important, like when you cross the road in India, when you drive a bike, when you drive a car in India versus in German or US or UK, where there may be somewhere left hand drive, right hand drive. It is important that you know the rule regulations of that country. Similarly, the rule regulations of GCP in India is important. And then harmonized GCP, the global regulations is also important. This scheme is to see that those who are intending to give training and those who are giving training have a adequate competence which is certified by this body. Also, as an individual, if you get through the rigorous and the assessment of what you have acquired skill and knowledge, then a certificate of GCP, PCS will be given to you. And therefore, globally, you will be recognized as a competent person. And that is why the attempt of Government of India through THSTI, through this scheme, is to harmonize the competency to see that the person who has acquiring certificate are really competent, and therefore the data, therefore the study results of India are credible. So I welcome you all to this program, and I wish that you will work with the standards which has been set up in this, the syllabus which has been set up in this, which is not syllabus made by one person, by a group of experts, including international experts in it. So thank you very much, and I welcome you all.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for giving us the time, your precious time. You were so busy, I know. So now I invite Dr. Sanish Drevis. He is a member of Technical Committee for GCPPCS. He'll be taking session on minimum standard of competence. Welcome, sir. Can we start?
Yeah, thank you, Sonia. And let me know when you can see my screen and when you can hear me well.
Sir, we can see and we can hear you properly. Everything is all set and all good and on time, I guess.
Thank you so much. So
Okay,
once again, thank you THSTI and Dr. Sujeta and Dr. Sonia and other members for the opportunity. I'm presenting the GCPPCS scheme, the background, as well as what the scheme is about. And these are, you could say, developed by the CDSA, the erstwhile CDSA, THSTI. The first version came out in 2020. And then immediately, based on feedback that we received from the public consultation that was held, we actually brought out the 2021, the second version of this. So much has been said about GCP. So this is all about the design, conduct, performance, monitoring, auditing, recording. I mean, the whole gamut of, you could say, doing a clinical research or a clinical trial. We also know that the DTAB under the Drugs and Cosmetics Act has, you could say, ensured that the adoption of GCP guidelines is required for streamlining clinical trials in India. This also adopted by ISO 14155. And currently, if you look at how GCP is practiced in India, there is a lack of standard as to what a professional who's doing this should be trained or certified and how they need to do this. We don't have any way of assessing whether the person is actually doing what he or she is supposed to be doing, and whether that is in the right way or not. And it's not only people who are already in the clinical research workforce that requires some form of certification, some form of accreditation, some form of training, etc. But even those who are newly qualified professionals who are actually coming into this field requires competence assessment in their skills, their knowledge, and that application of that knowledge into this area. And as far as pedagogy is concerned, since competencies are observable, they can also be measured and assessed to ensure that those knowledge and skill sets have been imbibed, and hence they can be applied into the field of clinical research. There are no generally agreed upon set of core competencies upon which educational programs and training requirements for either entry-level professionals or those who are already in the profession can be done or assessed. And that's the origin of the scheme GCPPCS, which is designed to evaluate and certify in a self-directed practical learning method rather than in a supervised training fashion. So it's more, you could say, you can push your own pace. You can actually allow yourself to be certified based on what you feel is your level of readiness. This certification scheme is also envisaged to promote, maintain, and develop the competencies, that is the whole three attributes, which is the professionalism, knowledge, skill, as well as you could say the individual professional, what he or she actually aspires to be. It encourages applicants to plan, record, and reflect on the professional development and requirement needs through assessing themselves against the competence standards. And that's how the GCPPCS actually came out, or what we call as the minimum standard of competence, or MSC, for who should be called as a good clinical practice professional. Those who get, you could say, certified will actually be able to carry the certification, or the, you could say, or the certificate which says that they are a certified GCP professional at a basic level. Now, the experts in the technical committee went through what all should be the requirement and came up with the core competence domain, which includes 6 of them. The protocol, the investigation product development and guidelines, ethical considerations for patient safety and well-being, clinical study operations related domain, study and site management, and data management and informatics. Now, within each of these core competency domains, there could be topics which are common to several of them. And a common one in India, and which is of immense importance with regards to patient safety, is the reporting of serious adverse events or death that happens during a clinical trial. So that could actually be part of several different domains. There could also be other topics which might be there across different domains that are there. The first one is, you could say, on the protocol. Now, the protocol is the one which has, you could say, different items to it. And what it tends to assess is it encompasses the knowledge of the scientific concepts related to the design of clinical research, the need, the rationale, and the objectives, and flowing from the objectives is the endpoint and the outcomes. The candidate or the person who is a professional should be able to identify the clinically important question, explain the key elements with regards to how it is going to be constructed, including some basic knowledge about the statistical, epidemiological, as well as the operational aspect of designing the protocol. And then, of course, in order to tie all this in, basic level knowledge of pathophysiology, pharmacology, toxicology, those which are relevant to that of the protocol. The second domain is on investigational product development and regulations, the knowledge about how drugs, devices, and biologicals are developed and regulated, the roles and responsibilities of the various stakeholders, including the sites, the institution, the ethics committee member, the investigator, all of them who are involved or participating in the investigational product development process. The professional should also be able to explain the investigational product development process and the activities, including the requirement for GMP that are involved in the life cycle management of these medicinal products, which could even include things like retention policies. How would the drug or the device or the biological or the vaccine, how is it going to be destroyed, etc. There needs to be basic understanding of the regulatory requirement for IP, including some of the specific processes and phases necessary to seek ultimately marketing authorization once the clinical trials are completed. As I said, there could be common themes like the safety reporting, which could also be, you could say, tested in this particular domain. The engine of GCP is, of course, patient safety. And there is a lot of consideration with regards to the ethics of doing clinical research, including understanding and knowledge about the historical events that led to the evolution of ethical guidelines and regulatory processes, including the Belmont report, and starting from the Belmont report all the way up to, you could say, the NDCT rules or the ICH regulations, etc., that are there. Understand the requirements for human participant protection as described in these guidelines, both national and international. Define concepts like clinical equipoise as well as therapeutic misconception as related to the conduct of the clinical research from a patient perspective. Explain sample size suitability, inclusion-exclusion criteria, and other scientific criteria to assure human participant protection and vulnerable population, as well as what are the additional safeguards that are required when you have patients who are vulnerable in your clinical research. Explain informed consent process and its key elements, including the one which is relevant for India, which is audio-video recording of the informed consent process, especially if it is a new drug or if it is a vulnerable population, etc. Understanding and knowledge of the operational aspects of ethics and safety, including reimbursement for participation, compensation, as applicable with regards to the NDCT rules and the Drugs and Cosmetic Acts, is also something which will be assessed in this particular domain. The fourth domain is on clinical study operation, and this includes study management as well as compliance with GCP, ensuring data as well as safety and handling the investigation product. So what are the roles and responsibilities of the clinical investigation team at the site? Evaluate the design and conduct and documentation of the trial. A huge chunk of how to manage safety, including adverse events, serious adverse events, causality, relatedness, etc. Dispensing of IP, role and process for monitoring of the clinical trial, whether it is the routine clinical monitoring or medical monitoring. Describe the roles and purpose of audit that is undertaken in a clinical trial. And then, of course, also understand what are the requirements when the drug is marketed. The domain which talks about the study and site management is more on what happens at the site, including human resources, infrastructure, and finances, which are necessary for clinical research that is conducted at the site. The process of site selection and its supervision. How does the site actually develop a financial management timeline requirement, as well as some of the cross-disciplinary personal resources that are required for doing a clinical trial, which could even include interactions with ethics committees and others. Effective training methods to manage risk and quality, understand the steps in clinical project management as to how clinical trials are planned, patient recruitment is done, how to manage, you could say, documentation and others. A basic understanding of legal responsibilities, issues, and liabilities are also a requirement in this domain. So is understanding of procedures, documentation, and the oversight management by all the stakeholders. While not everyone in the clinical trial needs to know about data management and informatics, it is quite obvious that anybody who is involved in clinical research should know a little bit about how the data that is collected is processed and how does the results of the study actually then, you could say, come out of the clinical trial. So for that, I think there should be a basic understanding for the GCP professional on what are the basic understanding of the data requirement, how is the source data managed, how does the data get entered into electronic data capture in today's time, how are queries generated and what is the reason for them, how do you ensure data quality, how do you ensure correction and concept of the locked database, etc. A basic understanding of what does the biostatistician do before the protocol is completed or written, and as well as during the analysis time, the typical data flow through the clinical trial, electronic data capture, and all the other information technology that is associated with this, as well as data correction, as well as the final analysis and other stuff that are part of data management and informatics. Now, while these are the different domains, the level of competence which is required to perform a stated job role can be divided into whether it can be done by somebody which requires advanced or basic level of understanding. The basic level is what somebody would require for all the functions except for maybe for the data manager or the others. Say, for example, an auditor does not require heavy understanding of data management and others, but would require a good amount of understanding of how to actually evaluate the data or the collection of the source data, etc. Now, the evaluation of a professional can be based on evaluating the sub-competencies within all of these. And the interpretation of the sub-competencies can also be, you could say, done into two different or three different modules. One is the effective action, which means that the understanding of, you could say, a particular activity or a particular one. Say, for example, if you take the example of reporting of a serious adverse event. So this would mean what is required, who should report, why should it be reported. So these are attitudes like assist, acknowledge, choose, justify, etc. The second part is the cognitive actions that are required to be completed, which means that this is in what form should the investigator report the SAE to the regulatory agency. What do you mean by Form 5? How do you identify which is the correct Form 5? What are the different data domains that are required in that Form 5? How do you organize this data? What all information are critical to the data being reported? So these would imply understanding or having the knowledge of the professional to list what are the different requirements, identify what are the requirements, define, describe, etc., etc. The third, you could say, sub-competency would be what we call as the psychomotor actions, which means to demonstrate. So, for example, if an SAE is reported, what are then the next follow-up steps? Who all should be communicated about this particular SAE? How do you actually ensure you, along with the, you could say, your sub-investigator, etc., identify what do we mean by, you could say, relatedness? How do you ensure that the patient actually gets medical management as well as compensation under India's rules and regulations? So these are some of the psychomotor sub-competencies that can actually be judged for a professional. So this particular slide actually shows how assessment of competence by evaluating the knowledge can be done in a particular profession. So, for example, if you take the example of a protocol, a GCP professional should be able to recognize what is the need and rationale for writing a protocol, or what scientific question is being asked, or what is the unmet medical need why you're doing this particular study. Similarly, the professional would need to know how do you explain the different principles. So if you have to come to a sample size calculation, what are the different elements that lead to calculating a sample size? So some of these basic knowledge would be required for a profession. And something which is important from a patient safety perspective is how do we ensure that the patient is, if the patient is having a serious adverse event, how do we ensure that the causality assessment and the reporting requirements are followed through? So recognizing the difference between the different types of AEs, what do you do when an SAE happens? Or how do you recognize that? How do you do the causality assessment, the relatedness, and the reporting requirements, etc.? So in each of these domains, there can be these sub-competencies that can be assessed. And within each of these sub-competencies, there are the psychomotor and the other functions that can also be looked at. The reference documents that are used for developing the minimum standard of competence are the Indian GCP guidelines, which is undergoing revision as we speak, the ICH GCP E6R21, the NDCT rules, the ICMR guideline, which came out in 2017. And this is also adapted from the joint task one, which is, you could say, developed earlier internationally. So with that, thank you so much, everyone, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful session, for spreading knowledge about MSc. So I request all the attendees, all the participants, if they have any questions to Dr. Sanish, they can ask now because we still have time. You can drop in your questions if you have any queries, any questions to Dr. Sanish.
और उसका सर्टिफिकेट अपलोड कर दिया मैंने उसका भी सर्टिफिकेट हमको भेज दिया है ना
We don't have any questions as of now. So somebody is asking for PPTs.
Dr. Sonia, we can put all these PPTs on the GCPPCS website because these PPTs are almost standard PPTs.
Yes,
And
yes.
they can pick it up from there, as well as they will also get it from the YouTube link live, which is there
Live,
from the recording.
yeah, it is recording. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
So they can listen to the session again on YouTube Live. And since we are doing this webinar series from November, so you will get like all 6 sessions on YouTube. So I think we should start with Dr. Devjani now. Yeah. So thank you, sir. We will start the Q&A at 4:20. Then I'll ask you again to join and for the questions if there are any. So thank you so much, sir. And now I invite Dr. Devjani, Professor Devjani, who is in the assessment committee of GCPPCS, and she'll be giving you a brief about certification process for GCP professionals.
Thank you, Dr. Sonia. Am I audible?
Yeah, I'm audible and clear, and your presentation is also on the line.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
We can start. Yeah.
First of all, a very good afternoon to all the participants here and all the distinguished gathering here. Good afternoon from India. And I would like to thank THSI, Dr. Sucheta, Dr. Sonia, and the entire team that we are having all these series of webinars to make GCPPCS, that is Good Clinical Practice Professional Certification Scheme, popular and create an awareness. And today I would be speaking on the certification process for the GCP professionals. So just before I start off with all my slides, I would like to tell the participants here that I'm really thankful to Dr. Sucheta, first of all, to give an overview about the scheme, and of course, Mr. Jody, who introduced to us, and he clearly said that we have 2 wings very clearly, and Dr. Sucheta also interpreted through her schematic representation that one side we have the opportunity for the GCP professionals to come directly to an approved personal certification body and get themselves assessed and get certified. Or some people can go if they feel they need a training and go to the training institute and get trained and come back for certification. So all said and done, the certification process for GCP professionals is a very important step to understand. It's very easy. Only thing is that what I would be taking through is the different steps, the process, the procedures. And I'm thankful to Dr. Sanish Davis, who has very elusively explained the minimum standard of competence, which makes all of us the work very easy, because I have a few slides and maybe I need not go into the depth of it, because Dr. Sanish Davis was very, very clear in explaining the minimum standards of competence. So as we all know, that you can put your question answers in the chat box, or even you can ask at the end of the session. And therefore, I begin my presentation, and I hope I'll be able to explain to you very lucidly. And first of all, I would like to bring to you the international scenario for the personal certification process. That is the standard, the ISO standard 17024. That is a standard which specifies all the requirements to get the professionals certified, that the personals, in this case, the personals we would be talking would be good clinical professional people, the personals who would get certified. And the standard which would be used for the certification process is again the personal certification standard, that is ISO 17024. And therefore, this standard is very much in practice. And there has been many schemes across the world. Even in our country, Dr. Sucheta has already named a few of them which are in our country as well. And these standards are being used much. It is very much popular, like the yoga certification scheme, the traditional healer certification scheme. Now we have the good clinical professional certification scheme. We have a fire safety certification, professional certification scheme. We have electrical safety. So there are a lot of schemes, voluntary schemes, which are in the market, and all of them are using the personal certification standard for certification. And these are like on any domain: health, safety, environment, national security, or unfair trade practices. And as you all have already been introduced, that we have two sectors, and this for GCPPCS, it is a voluntary standard, and we also have regulations, but here we are dealing with a voluntary standard, that is in GCPPCS. And what we need while we do the certification process is to check the compliance. That means the standard. The GCPPCS has got this minimum standard of competence, which Dr. Sanish Davis has just introduced us to it. And also we have the 17024 standard. There are requirements, and the basic crux of the matter is to check the compliance. And how do we check the compliance? We check it through whether they are confirming to these requirements. And what is the mechanism of this? That is the mechanism of assessment. And we call this as the conformity assessment. So the assessments are done based on the requirements which are prescribed. And they are, once we see that they are in confirmation, the personnel, they get certified and they become a certified professional. And this conformity assessment also enhances the confidence in the person's competence, that they are competent to do the job, what they're doing, because they have been assessed and they have been seen to comply with the requirements for the standards. And as Dr. Sucheta Kurundkar has already said, that these certifications have the international acceptability, and that is through this method of conformity assessments and certification. And along with this, the certified people can travel across borders, across the country, and get recognized for their competence. So this is a very important step, that is the conformity assessment and the certification process. And this is being accepted internationally. And how it is done? It is accomplished through accreditation. Again, as we said, we have one personal certification body, which has been approved by THSTI, and they are also accredited for another voluntary scheme, and they have been accredited under 17024, and therefore we have the confidence of the competence of this personal certification body, and they have also been approved for GCPPCS. And therefore, people who wish to get the professionals, the GCP professionals who wish to get themselves certified, they can approach this personal certification body, get themselves assessed, and get certified. So as I've been talking again and again, the standard 17024, it is for personal certification. So, the beauty of this standard, the personal certification standard, is, if I may say, it states that here, for the personal certification process, the qualification, there is a shift from the qualification-based systems to a competence-based system. So what is competence? Competence is based on the knowledge and the skill. The GCP professional have the knowledge, and that they will be assessed through a process of examinations, that is the MCQs, and what they know they would be answering. But their skill also would be tested, and how it would be tested, that it has been written down in the scheme documents, that they would be given case studies, and these case studies, the skills of these professionals will be tested, and that therefore their knowledge and skill would be judged, and they would be demonstrating, the professionals will be demonstrating this both knowledge and skill, and their competence will be assessed, and they would be certified. And therefore this personal certification, this personal certification standard actually says that even if you have a MSc degree, even if you have a PhD degree or any other degree, qualification degree, but if you want to get certified through this scheme, through this process, you have to demonstrate your knowledge and skill, and therefore the qualification, that is the mark sheets or the certificates of your qualification, is not as much important as it is to demonstrate your knowledge and skill. And this knowledge and skill one may have acquired through any process, either through education or training or even work experience or even self-study. So therefore, the standard says they only need to demonstrate their competence, that is the knowledge and skill. The standard does not give any mandatory rule that they should be class 10 or 12 plus, or they should show their certificate, or they should have a matriculation certificate, etc., etc. But they only need to demonstrate their knowledge and skill. And all this knowledge and skill they can acquire by any method, as I said right in the beginning, that if a GCP professional thinks that the person has the understanding of the minimum standard of competence, which Dr. Sanish Davis has just explained to us, if they think they know all this and they can sit for the examinations and demonstrate the knowledge and skill, that is fine. But if not, if they think they need further training, they can go to a training institute, get some amount of training, and come back and get themselves assessed and get certified. So any route is thing. And how does this evaluation happens? In this case for GCPPCS, it is a written test. It is MCQ-based written test to test the knowledge, and there are case studies, which in that case, the skill will be tested. But it can be for any personal certification. There are others like yoga, traditional healers, where there are either based upon the situation, there can be oral examination, written, practical, observations, or any other means. So this is a beautiful standard which gives the opportunity of different levels of people's skills and knowledge to get assessed, tested, and certified, and get recognized across the borders of your country, and therefore it is accepted. And again, it says that in the educational system, once we get, say, for example, an MSc degree or a BSc degree, it remains with us throughout our life. But in this case, once a person gets certified, that has got a specific validity period. For example, if the validity of the certificate is for 5 years, then the person has to come back up just before the expiry of the 5 years and approach the certification body to get recertified. Again, recertification is also a voluntary process. If the person feels that the person is benefited by having this certification, they can come for recertification or they may not. So it is a very much in the voluntary sector, but definitely it would help people. And again, when a personnel gets certified, they are, for example, if the certificate is valid for 5 years, within that 5 years, they are under surveillance of the personal certification body, because when they receive the certificate, there is a particular code of conduct which they have to agree and to abide by. And that is what it is the duty of the personal certification body to have the checks and balances so that they see that whatever they have signed or agreed to, whether they're abiding by it. So these are all, and this is all in the written down domain. It is all these documents are available on the website of THSTI. Anybody can go through it, read it, and if any queries, they can always get back to THSTI and ask for further clarification. So this is the crux of personal certification, or you can say the beauty or the strength of personal certification. Now, as I said, GCPPCS follows this model, that is the international model I showed in my first slide, and also the personal certification on what it is based. And therefore here, THSTI is the scheme owner, which means you write down all the documents. Here in this case, the scheme is GCPPCS, which is Good Clinical Practice Professional Certification Scheme. That is the scheme. And who is the owner or who has written down the scheme and owns it? That is THSTI. And as I've already said, this is in the voluntary sector. This is not under the regulatory regime, but voluntary sector. And this has a standard. The standard has been explained to you. The minimum standard of competence has already been explained to you, which is required for the certification. And there is a scheme logo, which you can see here on the top right-hand side. The scheme GCPPCS has got a logo. And whenever you go to the website, you will also find the explanation to this logo, because any logo should have a meaning, a vision, and what it stands for. Therefore, GCPPCS, the owner is THSTI, and the owner has also a scheme logo. And then there is uniform, laid down uniform evaluation and certification process, which means we would have, now we have only one single personal certification body, but in the near future, we will have many. And we anticipate personal certification bodies across outside the country also. And therefore, the scheme has to have uniform laid down evaluation and certification process, which will be followed uniformly by all the certification bodies, and there should be no deviation from it. And then there are requirements which are also written down for how an organization can start functioning as a personal certification body. They also undergo a process of assessment, and they also have a set of requirements. It is not that anybody can start issuing certificates, but these are also written down methods and requirements. And any other methods in the process of now, as we expand, we can also add on, go on adding the basic requirements if we come across any. So this can be some additions also, but basically the main document is already available on the THSI website. The requirements are there. The requirements for the personnel to get certified are there. The process of certification is there. The requirement for the personal certification bodies are there. Everything is available, and it is the same both for the domestic as well as the international market. And I will just bring across to you a few terms which you would be coming again and again, and therefore I thought I would just make a brief quick acquaintance with them. One is scheme owner. I have already said THSI is the scheme owner for GCPPCS. And all these terms are also defined in the international standard, that is ISO 17024. And if you can see at the end, scheme owner, organization responsible for developing and maintaining a certification scheme within bracket 3.2. That is the clause number of the international standard. So this is not that something we write, but this is what the standard has written, and it has been prescribed. So nothing comes just arbitrarily, and therefore it goes as per the international standard. Similarly, there has to be a certification scheme. In this process, the certification scheme is GCPPCS, and there it defines the competence requirement of the personnel seeking certification. And then there is a process, and in that process, the standard also says very clearly what is the scope of certification, what are the job and tasks which are also described, what is the required competence, what are the abilities in the sense, suppose a person can hear, see, whatever requirements are, if at all it is written down in the document. If it is not written down in the document, therefore it is not applicable. So that is where it is written within brackets, when applicable. Similarly, prerequisites, when applicable, and code of conduct, when applicable. All these things are written down. Whatever is written down is applicable. Whatever is not written down in the scheme document is not. So therefore, we go by all the written down documents, which I have already said. They are uniform across all the PRCBs within the domestic as well as the international market. Now, there is a very clear-cut certification process. That means activities by which a certification body, that is the personal certification body of the PRCB, determines that a person fulfills the certification requirements, that is the competence, the skills, knowledge, and the candidate who wish to get certified, they have to apply. There's a certain process, how the assessment will take place, how the decision of certification will happen. As I said, there is a recertification process. Then also, when they get the certificates, the certified people have to agree how they will use the certificates, the logos and marks. There should not be any misuse, and everything is written down. That is the beauty. Nothing goes beyond the writing process. Nobody can imagine or just say something. And I have already discussed a lot about competence. Then the requirement is examiner, who will conduct and score the examinations. And examiner is different from an invigilator. Invigilator is a person who will supervise the examinations, but does not evaluate. The examiner will evaluate the competence, whereas invigilator will only supervise. So all these things have been defined in the international standard itself. I have just picked up a few sort of terms and put across here just to make you more aware. And therefore, there is a validity period, I have already said. Then there is a concept of fairness. There is a concept of reliability. All these things are for the standard, and against everything there is a clause number given. You can go back to 1704 if you wish. You could get the standard from Bureau of Indian Standards. You can buy it or download it, whatever the requirements are, and go through these. And these are the numbers which describes all these headings. And therefore, I just have picked up from there to make you aware of the terms that we would be using quite often. Now, what is the certification process? Because I am talking about the certification process for the GCP personnel. So what is it? There should be an application, the competence assessment, there should be an assessment method, decision on certification, the format of the certificate, what all logos should be there, the surveillance method, the recertification method, and if you're certified and if you've found some sort of malpractice or whatever, there can be a suspension and there will be an inquiry about it. And if it is not found correct, then it will be again revoked or it can be cancelled. So all these different processes are described, and it is also again downloadable from the THSTI website. So therefore, I go a little bit in the details about the bullet points that I have just mentioned in the prior slide. It is the registration of application. That means the GCP professionals apply to THSTI because THSTI is the scheme owner and they have approved a personal certification body. And these application forms are either available on the THSTI website or even on the NACU, that is Northeastern Christian University, which has been approved as a personal certification body for GCPPCS. They would also have the application form. So application forms can be downloaded. Any query from the applicant, that is the GCP professionals who wish to apply for certification, they will put up the queries to the personal certification body, and they would get a response within 7 days of the receipt of query by the PRCB. So you see the beauty of this whole scheme is, or even the standard is, that most cases, sometimes we write for some query, for some information, and we keep on waiting endlessly for days together. But here, everything, even 7 days period has been written down in the document. You can download all these documents and go through it. It is there. So it is mandated that you should get a reply within 7 days of the receipt of the query by the PRCB. Then once you have applied, the applications to be reviewed for its completeness, that is the PRCB will review the applications. If there are any deficiencies, the PRCB will inform the applicant again. A time period has been specified, that is 7 days of receipt of application. Again, you're not waiting for days together, but again, 7 days from the receipt of application by the PRCB. If there are certain gaps observed in your application, the PRCB will inform the applicants. Then all applicants found to be complete are to be registered within 7 days of receipt of the application or additional information whenever it is needed and received, and a unique identification number will be allotted, acknowledged, and records will be maintained by the PRC. So there is no chance of your application getting lost because you will receive the unique identity number and the acknowledgement. And applications found violating the terms and conditions of GCPPCS will not be processed any further and rejected after due notice of 15 days. Again, if you apply, if there are certain deficiencies, the PRCB will let you know and you're supposed to get back and give all those informations. But if they are not found, the PRCB will wait for 15 days after they have notified you. It's not that just arbitrarily they will reject it. They have to wait for 15 days. So everything has been written down. It's crystal clear. So there is no ambiguity between the processes. And then once all of these processes done, the application will be registered. And sometimes what happens is, say, for example, one applicant has applied and for some reasons they could not complete for whatever reasons. Next time they want to come back and reapply, it will be treated as a fresh application. The PRCB will reject or close all applications under the following conditions. Again, the PRCB also knows what they're supposed to do and what they're supposed not to do. So here, in case of PRCBs, if deficiencies are observed in the applications are not completed within 1 month, or if the applicant does not take the assessment within 3 months of registration of applications, or any misuse, any malpractice, or voluntarily the applicant does not wish to go for certification. Therefore, under all these circumstances, the application will stand to be rejected. And now for the competence assessment, I'm not going to get into the details of this because this has been dealt by Dr. Sanish Davis very clearly. But all I wanted to say is there are 6 domains for the minimum standard of competence. And right now we are dealing with the basic level, and the certificate that would be issued will be for the basic level, and the pass percentage is 70% for this. And how is the assessment done? I have already I have said before also, the assessment is by multiple choice questions for testing the knowledge, and case study to test skills in the 6 domains of competence for the basic level. Just the prior slide, those 6 domains were there, and Dr. Davis has explained that. And as we have said, it is the basic level. There's no negative marking for the basic level, and the overall pass percentage is 70%. Now, this is again another important factor, that what is the competence of the assessment team? The people who are assessing, that also has been defined, and you can find in the documented in the process, certification process documentation, which you can download, and there has to be a minimum of 2 examiners. And what should be the competence of the examiners? That means they should be either postgraduate degree in medical sciences, nursing, pharmaceuticals, biological sciences, biostatistics, clinical data management. That means a postgraduate degree in any of these disciplines, 5 years of work experience in clinical research after receiving the postgraduate degree, GCP trained, and the team of personnel, that is examiners and question papers, to have all collective competence for all 6 domains. So this is the competence requirement for the assessment team, that is the examiners. That also has been defined. So a PRCB is bound to take the assessment team who has these minimum competence, and they will have 2 examiners minimum to do the assessments. Now, how is the assessment process? That is, the THSTI approves the PRCB. Whichever PRCB has been approved, they inform the applicants who meet the eligibility criteria and the date of assessment at least 15 days prior to the assessment date. That means the PRCB which has been approved by THSTI receives the applications from the applicant. They process the applications, and if they register them, and when they give the UID number and they acknowledge, and after that when they fix the date of assessment, they inform the applicants 15 days prior to the assessment date. They inform the examiners and candidates' name as well in advance to identify any conflict of interest. This is very important, conflict of interest. Say, suppose my teacher is an examiner and he or she has taught me just in the past 1 year. So the examiner has to get to know the name of the applicants and even the applicants would know, and then they have to declare. And if they have, at least there should be a minimum gap of 2 years between a teacher and a student relationship. Or similarly, if a person has worked in certain place and that place that person is an examiner, then all these should be kept in mind to avoid any conflict of interest. Inform the examination center's name of the candidates well in advance for identification. Even if you're taking exam at a center, whether the person is related to that examination center or not, that also needs to be told. Then communicate examiner's decision of the assessment to the candidate. That means once the assessment has been done, the candidates would be informed. Maintain an updated register of applicants. That means who applied. The candidates means the persons who were assessed, and the certified GCP professionals with the scope of certification and the status of certification. That means applicant is a person who has applied to get certified. Candidates are the people who would be appearing for the assessment. And certified GCP professional is clear enough, people who have cleared the assessment and they are eligible to get certified. And right at the moment when they get certified, the certificate would say they have been certified as GCP professionals for basic level. And what is the status of certification? That means on which date the certificate has been issued and the validity, the number of years till which time this particular certificate is valid. So all this will be there. Now, the decision of the certification is done by a competent person who are not involved in the assessment. That means the examiners who do the assessments are not to decide on the certification. They come and they give the mark scores to the personnel of the PRCB, and there is a separate person who would decide on the certification. Then there is no conditional grant. Somebody says, okay, I'm not cleared in this particular out of 6, maybe a person has not cleared in one domain and they say that I will clear it after 1 month or 2 months. No, there's no conditional grant. The PRCB to inform the candidate if they fail to meet the acceptance criteria for the assessment, and the candidate may take another assessment with the same or another PRCB, but would have to declare the previous performance while reapplying. So everything is very crystal clear. There's no hide and seek. If you have not been successful and you want to reapply, you just say I had applied, but I was not successful and I'm reapplying. Or for some reasons I could not appear, I had applied and I could not appear for my assessment and I once again apply afresh. So everything has to be in written down format, very crystal clear so that there is no ambiguity. Now the decision of certification continues, like if a GCP professional has given an address and that address is applicable to this certified professional, but the certified professional decides to relocate. So once the person relocates to another place and that place is not known to the PRCB, the certified professional, it is the duty of the certification professional to let the PRCB know where they have moved, because there is a condition of surveillance, there is a condition of recertification. Unless and until the PRCB knows where the person has moved, they may not be able to locate, and therefore this is very important. And I said the validity of the certificate is for 5 years. The successful GCP professionals will have a code of conduct for being certified. I have mentioned that also. And that is in a written down format. You sign on that code of conduct and then you receive your certificate. And if there is any transition takes place for the standard, or if there is any regulatory requirement, additional regulatory requirement, or some new regulations comes in and the MSc needs to be changed, it has to be aligned, and the certified professionals have to be also informed by the PRCBs, and it is the duty of the scheme owners to also let the PRCB know about the changes which are happening, if at all, for the minimum standards of competence. The scheme owner to inform the approved PRCB, as I said, of the transition policy, and the time of completing the process of transition. That is, we'll say, suppose as of date, there are no changes. But if there are some changes which are coming in, it cannot happen overnight. So some time has to be given, which is known as the transition period. And the PRCB would be told that within this time period, the transition will happen. And therefore, get yourselves geared up, tell the certified professional this change is happening. And therefore, all these processes are dealt very systematically, and time is given. Nothing is done overnight and just on knee-jerk reactions. And then the certificate which is given to the GCP professionals will have the name of the certified person. There will be a unique identification number, the name of the certification body, the reference to the certification scheme, the standard, including the issue date, the scope of certification, and the effective date and expiry date. I've already discussed it. That means the name of the person will be there. The UID which was given to them will be there. The name of the certification body who have certified the personnel will be there. The name of the scheme, for example, GCPPCS will be there. And what is the standard, that is whatever the standard, and the issue date will be there. The scope of certification, that means your GCP professional, the basic level will be there. And on the date which has the certificate has been issued, and there will be the expiry date, that would be 5 years from the date of issue of the certification. The certification format will be as approved by the scheme owner. Again, the PRCBs do not have the luxury of making their own format for the certificates. It is the scheme owner who prepares the format of the scheme, the certificate, and circulates among the personal certification body. Now, I have already talked about this, that there is a condition of surveillance, and the surveillance is to be conducted during the 3rd year of certification, because we all know the validity is 5 years, and during the 3rd year, mostly the surveillance will be conducted. And for the certified GCP professionals who have been working consistently in the field of GCP after being certified, there will be no surveillance assessment. This is a very important point. On production of evidence that the professional has been productively employed in the GCP work. So if a person has been certified and has been employed and can show that employment evidence, there is no surveillance. But for those people who are not working in this and they hold this GCP, then therefore, in order to have the certified status due, they have to undergo a retest for surveillance during the surveillance period. Similarly, recertification happens after 5 years. For recertification, the same process of assessment will happen. The PRCB will send a renewal notice 6 months before the expiry. The GCP professional will apply for the renewal at least 4 months before the expiry of the validity period. The PRCB will review the performance of the certified GCP professional seeking recertification. That means if they will also look at the surveillance assessment report, the compliance report, what they have done during the certification period, and if at all there are any complaints received against them or any sort of thing. So these are the things that the PRCB will look into and then process their application for recertification. And these I've already said, correct any suspension, complaints, or any feedback, all these things, or any adverse information. So these are all the criteria to process the application of the certified professional for recertification, and the application from the certified professional has to come in 4 months before the expiry of the certification. and suspension. The PRCB will issue instruction to the certified GCP professional for suspension with due notice of 15 days. It does not happen randomly. There has to be a notice has to be given, and the personnel has to be given the chance to respond and the personal hearing if necessary. Then they will check with the surveillance audit, or if there is any serious complaint or feedbacks, any administrative requirement like fees, etc., was not paid on time, or any violation of the terms and condition or the code of conduct that they have signed and they have gone against that, whatever they have signed. So these are all the things which will lead to the suspension, but it does not happen, as I said, arbitrarily. Their chance will be given to the professional to respond, and even in certain cases for personal hearing, then only a decision has to be taken on this matter. And finally, if at all any serious charges are there or any other contravention of the terms and conditions or anything which has not been done, then there is a cancellation of the certification. These are all written down in the documents, and it can be easily downloaded from the THSTI website. People can go through it at leisure, and if there are any queries, they can contact either THSTI or even better, the PRCB, who are into the business of certifying, and we have probably one person representing the PRCB here as well. So you can put up any questions for clarification, and then there is a certification fee for this, and the fee is publicly accessible, and that is also seen, and you can either see it on the PRCB website, or even THSTI can notify the people about this. As I said, complaints and appeals. Well, complaints, I just wanted to make clear, complaints can come in from any stakeholder, from anybody, but appeals are always against a decision taken. So there is a distinction between the complaints and appeals. Generally, in layman terms, we don't see a distinction, but here in the ISO standards or in this parlance, this is a very important phase, that we understand what are complaints and what are appeals. So the candidates, if they're unhappy with the functioning of the PRCB, can register a complaint to express their dissatisfaction, or even appeal for reconsideration of any adverse decision. So even the applicant or the candidate or the certified professional has a right either to complain or to appeal, but complaints can come in even for other stakeholders or anybody, and that is an open thing. And there is in the website of the PRCB as well as THSTI, there is the website IP address where you can lodge your appeals and complaints. I think in a nutshell, I just have put in the major points, and everything is downloadable. You can read, you can ask, have your queries clarified, contact the PRCB or THSTI. So I thank all of you for the patient hearing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hello, thank you so much, ma'am, for the wonderful session. And it was quite knowledgeable, lengthy, but knowledgeable enough. And I think people must be having some doubts on the certification process. They can drop in their questions in between, because we will be starting with the Q&A as of now. Please drop in your questions if you have any inquiries, any small query related to GCPPCS, professional certification, PRCB, TI, any vocabulary you didn't understand, please kindly write us here in the chat box.
There seem to be no questions, Sonia.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So just to give you a brief about, so I think I should share the PRCB details
Yeah, sure.
for the time being. Yeah.
Also the training,
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We can use the slides as a slide deck and put it in the GCPPCS website. So apart from the YouTube live and other details, our participants can view them and download them from the GCPPCS website. Dr. Bhatnagar will try to do that.
Yes. So I hope everyone can see my slide. We have one PRCB, which is Northeastern Christian University, which is NICU, and this is our first approved PRCB personal certification body. So those who are really interested to know about how certification is done, what is the procedure, what is the fees. So as of now, they have reduced the fees to 6,500 from 20,000. So you can write them also in the PRCB PR006@nicu.ac.in, or you can write to us also on gcppcs.cdsa@thsti.res.in. These are the two links which can direct you towards the GCPPCS web link, which is CDSA, and another one is another link can connect you to NICU. So you can take the screenshot of it, or also I'm copying it in the message box, so you can take the screenshot from there also. So I've attached the link and email ID in the chat box also. If you are interested in writing us to us, so you can just copy and paste from there.
I think with no questions there, it makes us very easy, Johari. Maybe we can think of winding half an hour early.
Yes, yes, yes.
yes, sure. If
Johari,
there are no questions,
yeah.
then we can wind up early. And I think Sonia, you would like thank was formal vote of thanks.
Yes, sir, yes, sir. So I think there will be no questions, so we should wind up. So I thank all the participants, all the speakers, and for giving us the overview, taking up the session on MSc certification process, which were the main session for the GCP PCS, and for being such a wonderful audience. Please write to us if you, and this wouldn't have been possible without you all. So I request all, this webinar series will be continuing in near future also. This whole year, we'll be doing this webinar series. Any updates, any new updates on fees, new edition, we are looking forward to getting in more PRCBs on global level, and we would be happy to give you more information about them also. So if you are thinking that NICU is far from this place, don't think that way. They are online also. So yeah. So thank you all for being such a wonderful audience, and thank you all the speakers for always for helping me and helping the program to do better always. Thank you so much. So apart from thank yous, we have no other questions. Yeah. Yeah. So should I close
Thank you
the
so much.
live?
Yes, thank you
Yeah.
so much, Jory ji. Thank you so much, Debjani, Dr. Sonia. Thank you so much, and all the
Thank you, ma'am.
participants.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Namaskar and Jai Hind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.